Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk. I am your host, Dr. Dawn Reid, and I'm excited to be joined, as always, with my co host, Coach Will. How are you, Coach Will?
Hey, I am doing well. Welcome back. I am doing well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm excited. So, this is our first episode for the year, and I am really excited to bring you another opportunity to engage with us, talk with us, and bring topics that are really important to coaches. And as you know, we are real talk, and me and Will do not fluff. We probably joke more than we should, but we do try to bring you some content that's going to be really helpful for you as a coach, but also for you as a coachee. So thank you for joining us wherever you're listening or watching. We thank you and appreciate you for being here. So in this episode, right, we're going to do a whole segment this episode with really looking at coaching from the lens of imperfections and perfections, from ethics. And we have quite a few great topics for everyone today. So, this particular episode, we're going to be talking about the truth about digital nomadism and cultural responsiveness in coaching. And as you know, I have been in Thailand. I was in Thailand from August 7th
In
all the way, I know,
Thailand.
right? All the way until Thanksgiving. So I actually came back to the States Thanksgiving Day. My husband picked me up. My husband and my youngest son picked me up early in the morning before all the festivities began. And
Had
so
time to grab some turkey and stuff.
exactly, it was, yes, I was able to eat my stuffing, my turkey. It was a good thing. So there's a lot of learning, and I'm happy to bring some of that information here to you guys. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story, and really talk about, you know, and Will, you please jump in with this. I know you see a lot of digital nomads, a lot of people on Instagram and TikTok, and they talk about being a digital nomad and coming to a country and how
Yes.
wonderful it is and how cheap it is, right? Um,
Right.
and what is your impression when you see those videos? I'm really curious. What are your impressions?
It's amazing, really. It is amazing, especially to see a lot of people of color doing it.
Hmm.
It does take a lot of planning. In my mind, I was like, this takes a lot of planning. And also in my mind, I'm like, you can't just like you have to plan it out because you can't really just be like, oh, hey, come on over this weekend. We're having I'm having something.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's that's a big difference. So digital nomad within itself is great. It gives you a chance to see other parts of the world. Um, COVID has proved that it's the world is a lot smaller than we think because of the fact that you're able to work remote
Yep.
and the digital nomad piece has come into play.
And that is the general view, right? The feeling
Hmm.
that this is freedom, that you get to travel, you get to have new experiences, and there's that glamorous side, right? But there are some aspects that I think is definitely specific for coaches, though coaches without borders. I think it's also very important to recognize planning is priority. And I think that people go
Right.
into it and there's a lot of things that they don't take into account for. They really don't.
Hmm.
And I really want to make sure that while digital nomad coaching sounds glamorous, there's behind the scenes, behind the Instagram post information that I think people really need to understand before they really make that jump. And I don't care where you go, you need to keep these things in mind. And we're going to talk about that and a whole bunch of things, in different segments as it relates to cultural responsiveness and coaching in particular. So
Right.
first, just to set up the scene a little bit. So as you know, because I talked to you early on when I was planning, like, look, I'm going to Thailand. Um, and I'm glad I did it. It was an amazing, wonderful experience. I got to coach people who I probably wouldn't coach. And ironically,
Mm.
there are, yeah, I really, like, seriously. And there's three clients that are still with me. And even though we got this crazy time difference now, they're like, no, I still want you to be my coach. And I'm like, okay. So I have,
Very good.
yeah, that's amazing. But I don't think digital nomads or coaches in particular really can appreciate the culture shock and the language barrier that
Right.
becomes a challenge, or the cultural norms and how it impacts the coaching session, and just how really holding space and being flexible when trying to understand the client's challenges. And so
Hmm.
one of the things that I recognized early on is the cultural and language differences. And when I talk about language, it's not just about speaking English and speaking Thai. In my case, it was
Right.
words can mean different things to different people. And one of the
Okay.
questions I asked a lot was, tell me what that means to you. Tell me what that word means to you. Tell me what that concept conjures up for you, because it could mean something totally different. So wanted to share that. So tell me any thoughts you're having or any questions you have for me. Like, what did you think about my wonderful stint? Because I know you and I talked and we kept in communication. Like, what were your thoughts?
So one of the things I've often wondered about was adjustment. When you're people, I think what happens when people look at being a digital nomad, they don't realize you have to adjust your time to match your clients. I come from an IT background, and I know one of the things that when COVID hit, I had wanted to go abroad somewhere, and my manager told me, he said, if you do get a chance to go abroad, keep in mind that you have to stay on the same schedule as what you're on now. He said, so he said, don't be like, oh, well, I have this meeting at such and such time. He said, no, if you're somewhere where it's 12 hours ahead and it's nighttime, you have to be on that meeting or on that call.
Yep.
So I know that was so how did you that's probably my first question. How did you how how did you adjust and how long did it take you to adjust to having clients on that? Because you were what, 12 hours
well, well,
ahead?
11 hours when the states was in daylight saving time, and 12 when they changed back. Yes, yes.
Right,
So 11, 12 hours.
right,
Yep,
right.
yep.
So how did you how well, I know how you probably adjusted, but how hard was it for you to adjust to that?
That's a good question, and I think it's something that digital nomads and coaches in particular don't take into account. So me, I
Hmm.
thought I planned for this well.
You thought,
I thought,
keyword.
yes, operative word right there. What I did, which was helpful, I think it would have been worse if I didn't do it. What I did was
Hmm.
I made sure I told all my clients, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before I was going, that my time would change. And these were the times I would be available, right? And I started adjusting my schedule and my booking hours based upon Thailand time zone.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I already started saying, okay, if you're gonna start scheduling me from August till November, this is what my schedule is gonna look like. So did that help? Absolutely. Theory is always beautiful. Practice is different. I did find that once I got there, I was missing a couple of sessions because if for whatever reason it wasn't syncing with what my clients were scheduling. So that first week
Right.
was a little bit of a hiccup for me. It adjusted pretty quickly. And again, I have great clients, but I do notice because of the time change, I got more people in Bangkok, Australia, Ireland,
Mm.
UK, China, Singapore, right? So I ended up getting more clients on that hemisphere and less clients on this hemisphere, which was really
Interesting.
interesting. Yes, it was. It really was. Um,
Interesting.
but I
Hmm.
think that there's something as a coach, if you're going to go to other countries as a coach without borders, you have to be very clear and very I would say plan ahead for how the time difference is going to impact you. Because then you also have jet lag, which I didn't start working at least 2 weeks after getting there. Because one of the things I put in my head is I don't know how jet lag was going to impact me. I didn't know how the time zone was going to impact me. So all of these things I did plan ahead. And again, even though there were some snafus, I will say that the planning did help minimize risk and minimize loss and discomfort. It really did. So I highly say plan. You really do got to plan for it. But it's you still also got to understand there's going to be some adjustments when you get there. But it was difficult. The jet lag actually was worse coming back home than it was going there, which was interesting. But I
Hmm.
will say, like, I had a lot of late. Anytime I did have a client or two from the States or from Canada, um, they like those early mornings, and it was like really late for me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, by 11 o'clock, I was so done. But yeah, so these are things that you do have to take into account.
Okay. So, like one of the things that you mentioned, and this is going to be a multi-layered question here. One of the things that you mentioned was that you spoke to other clients in other countries. So like the how can you prepare for the cultural differences? Because you're coming, okay, so you're coming from America,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to Thailand,
Mm-hmm.
and then you said that you had clients in France,
Yeah, I had a
correct?
client France. Yes, actually, I still have that client. He's still with me, which I'm very excited. Um, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland,
Straight.
UK, yeah, yeah, Singapore,
So
yeah,
that's that's let's say 4 or 5 different cultures, different
yes,
backgrounds.
yes.
Besides the one that you're coming from, that you're moving to, so you have to keep in mind what you're leaving, where you're moving to, and then the different people that you're addressing. So how did you prepare for that?
Well, one, I want to kind of tie in the ICF competencies. And this is why I tell people all the time as a coach, your development and understanding the ethical standards and the competencies, this is where some of it come into play as far as how you're going to present yourself professionally as a coach. And so, just to be clear, the competencies that helped guided me to some degree was ethical practice, trust and safety, and presence. Those were three really highly important making this transition and working with so many different cultures. And as you know, I do a lot of training around culturally responsive coaching. So those things definitely helped me monitor how I showed up. The other thing that I highly recommend, for when I decided I was going to go to Thailand, I started reading up on Thailand. I started reading up on the religion, the norms, the culture, the belief systems, the values, what's important to the people, right? As I started getting clients from other countries, and again, you get profiles. So if you're an independent coach and it's
Right.
coming directly
Okay.
to you, you do a profile, right? If they are
Okay.
part of a coaching platform, you get a profile. So it's important to when you see their profile come up and you see the information of where they're located, what type of company they work for. It's really important to do, even if it's preliminary. It could be preliminary, that's okay. Understand the values, understand the culture, understand some common beliefs that people in that region might have. And again, not to create a monolith because even within a culture could be subcultures and differences and nuances. But to have a high level view is going to be important, right? The second thing is when you talk to that person as a coach, one of my questions is, what are some values or beliefs that are really important for you that you want me to honor?
Hmm.
Are there any cultural traits or aspects that are really important to you that you want me to make sure that I respect during our time together? So I was asking that question a lot, right? To make sure I understood how they thought, what they felt, so that it could drive the conversations. So and so that I don't like have my own biases or like stereotypes or anything like that. Because again,
Right.
they're not a monolith. Just like I don't want to be seen as a monolith, right? And every person that's part of your culture does, you don't necessarily think the same. So I always ask about, are there any differences or nuances that you want me to highlight as we work together? So those are the things I think coaches in particular, digital nomads in general, should be mindful
Hmm.
of in how they work with people from different countries and different cultures. And we're going to talk about that in the next session too, the next segment. So I hope people listen to the next segment, because we're really going to deep dive around that part of the conversation.
Okay. So what do you think is the biggest risk if coaches ignore cultural responsiveness?
Ooh, well, one, you're gonna infringe upon the ICF ethics, but as far
Right,
as
right.
with client centeredness, right? What I see as a big risk is you are going to diminish or not establish trust. Because how can
Mhm.
someone feel like you can support and help them if you don't understand who they are? So I think the risk is to trust. I think the risk is to the vulnerability factor. So how can I be vulnerable as a coachee, as a client, if my coach don't understand my culture, which is part of me?
Hmm.
Um, so I would say there's an insensitivity. There will be a lack of awareness. And I think it's just going to make it ineffective to do the coaching, to really facilitate the coaching process.
Right.
And
Okay. All
And so
right.
I'm curious on your end too, and I think you asked some really good questions. Like if you think about working with a coach, and it could be for anything, right? Who's maybe not part of your culture. Like what
Hmm.
are the things that's
Hmm.
going to be important to you as a client?
Well, I would, like you said, people come with a uh, not necessarily a bio, but I would look for a bio to see what that coach, what their specialty is, who they work with, if that's in the bio,
Mm,
um,
mm-hmm.
and I would probably lead off with certain questions because like they all should have some kind of bio, what they specialize in and things of that nature. So, and then when I would come in, I would probably have certain questions that I would probably ask. I'm not sure what the question would be right off the top of my head, but I would probably and then see how they fill me out, because
Mm-hmm.
you get a feel for
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
during like the first session. You'd be like, okay, yeah, that person may not have been for me or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Or you give it another session and see, okay, yeah, okay, yeah. So that's what I would probably look for initially. I would get the feel for
The
them.
feel, that sense.
Um,
Right,
yeah,
right,
yes,
right.
yes,
That makes sense.
yes.
That
Like,
makes perfect sense.
yeah. I mean, I would read it and then get the feel because you may read something, then all of a sudden they shock you when you're in. You're like, wait a minute, okay, this
Yeah,
person has me thinking about things I didn't think
wait.
about before.
Right.
Because it may be an unorthodox way of thinking, and sometimes you may be stuck in your own mind where I'm looking for this, and if this person does not fit into
This box.
this box,
Yeah.
oh, maybe they're not for me. When sometimes a person could be thinking out of the box and bring you to something that you'd be like, oh, okay, I got that, you know.
So it sounds like really being open. So even though it may
Yes.
be different at first, is keeping an open mind about the experience,
Hmm.
because again, that is one of the beauties or the positives of the digital nomading or coach who kind of coaches so many different people and cultures, is that other cultures bring a certain awareness that give you a whole different perspective, right? Of
Right.
how they navigate whatever life pillar that they want to be coached around. Like, for example, which is really interesting. I think my theory is one of the reasons why a lot of the clients picked me when I was in Thailand was because I can give them the perspective of how do I navigate working with a leader who's in the US while I'm here in Singapore? Or how do I
Mm.
work with my direct reports and I'm here in Italy? Like that type of perspective. Or, I'm new to the company and this is the first time I'm working with our American market. Like, what are some things that I should be aware of that I'm nervous about, right?
Right.
And I'm gonna tell you what I thought was a really interesting thing that I saw. And again, I don't want this to sound like a monolith because I don't think that this happens to all people who are part of the Asian culture. But I did find that a lot of the East Asian clientele or people that I worked with, the way the culture is set up, and this is where it's important for coaches. The way the culture
Hmm.
is set
Hmm.
up, it's the idea just work very hard, do your best, but keep your head down, right? So, in other words, you don't talk about yourself, you don't brag about your projects, you just do your work. Show that you go above and beyond, and people will recognize you. Well, one of my clients was like, my manager sits in Cali, and I'm here, right? And
Hmm. Hmm.
they're not recognizing me. And I noticed that of my other colleagues, especially in the US, they talk about the projects and themselves all the time. But in my culture, and they specifically exact words, in my culture, we don't do that. And I feel uncomfortable because I feel like I'm bragging about myself. You're not supposed to brag about yourself. Other people are supposed
Right.
to brag about you. So
Yeah,
it is
your work is supposed to be
speak
the
for itself. Yeah, yes,
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 and
yes.
other people are supposed to take notice. You're not supposed to toot your own horn. Other people are
Yes.
supposed to toot it for you.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, as a coach, being present with that, right? And
Mhm.
working with your client, because again, if that's where you're always going to be, and that's where you're going to navigate all the other life pillars. And it's difficult to make that adjustment or to stretch yourself. Then, how do we make it work? So, one of the solutions that we brainstormed and we talked about was how can you talk about the project, not yourself? That made a
Right.
big difference for that client, right? So I stayed present with them. I wasn't trying to convince them, oh, well, you got to do it this way because this is how it is. You're American bosses. No, no, right? I look at,
Hmm.
we have to meet our clients where they are and what are they most comfortable doing, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable. Still respecting their culture. Because again, the norm for that particular client is you don't brag about yourself. That's not
Right.
going to change because that's going to be reinforced
Hmm.
within the culture, right? So it was
Right. That's who
okay,
that person is.
right,
Right.
right. So yeah, yeah, and they were
Mhm.
really bothered by that. So the solution, stretching them, but keeping them in a place of I'm not going against my culture. Um, Another
Right.
thing, real quick, before we start to end, is I heard a lot from I'm younger and I have a lot of older direct reports, right? So you might have a young
Hmm.
manager and they have people that's a little bit older than them. And in the Asian culture in particular, there is this hierarchy of how respect, even names, like even when you like if there's someone older than me, there's a particular name I have to call them. If they're younger than me, there's a particular
Right.
name or title I have to give them, and they have to give
Okay.
me,
You're right.
right? And so now you're in this position where you're older, I mean, you're younger, and you got older direct reports, and now you've been, your culture mandates a certain type of respect for the hierarchy. How do you lead
Hmm.
somebody?
Hmm.
Right. And so
Right.
being able to understand, these are vital for coaches to understand how these cultural norms.
Cultural difference.
Right,
Hmm.
right.
Play a role into because you don't want to disrespect somebody by saying something,
Hmm.
and that's where your learning comes in at. That's where your particular type of like, oh, let me study. Like you said, you read up
I
on some
did,
things
yeah.
before you even came to the land
Yep.
because you don't want to be disrespectful.
Mm-mm.
You don't want to come in and because they could look at it like, oh, well, yeah, no, I'm not going to deal with this person. So, granted, there is a learning curve, but there's only
Hmm.
so much of a learning curve that there should be. I mean, because if somebody's uh coming to you for a service, they're going to want you to kind of be like, well, okay, they didn't know this, or they may feel disrespected if you don't do things in a certain way. Like you said, you have to address people in a certain manner. They may feel disrespected and they'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to go with uh Coach Reid next time because of X, Y, and Z, and it may be something that you didn't even
Didn't even know.
think about. Yep.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's another question that coaches can also say, or statements. Like one of the things I do in the onboarding or first session, I often say,
Hmm.
you know, if I get something wrong, please know it's not from my heart. It's like I just don't know. And I don't know what I don't know. And so please feel free to
Right.
correct me or, redirect me if I'm not understanding something because I don't ever want to be disrespectful. So just let me know if something didn't land right,
Right.
you know. And
Right.
so
So that kind of leaves it open to say, hey, I'm here just, I'm willing to work with you. I'm learning
yes,
type of
exactly.
thing. Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
So with that, my hope is that people will understand that there's more to it than what you see on TikTok and Instagram. And to
Mhm.
recognize that it is a privilege. It is a privilege to be able to travel, to be able to work with different people from different cultures. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But it's also a huge responsibility. You have to be very mindful of how you are protecting your clients, how you are
Hmm.
being aware of your own biases and your own awareness gaps, right? And the more that you
Right.
can kind of prepare, ask questions, talk to people, the better it's going to be with you. And what I'll say is one of the things that was helpful is, I did connect with other organizations like ICF Bangkok, different organizations.
Hmm.
There was also a small group in the condo that I was staying at that they all kind of met together. And look, I was asking questions because there was a lot of people that was there for like 10, 15, 20 years, and I'm like, yeah, what about this? What about this? And I have this kind of clients. And so, like, these are things that are going to be helpful to you as a coach in particular, but also as a digital nomad, just to make sure that you are being responsible as well as culturally responsive, right? So, yeah, any closing thoughts or questions, Coach Will, before we wrap this segment up?
Well, I feel I'm glad you had the experience. I wish I could have been there. I lived through you vicariously. I was waiting for you to, come and say that you ate some crickets or something, but no.
Look, look, the one thing
Oh,
I'll say as
I
far
was waiting for you to go on the daring
no,
side,
no, no, no,
the
no,
daring side.
no,
No,
no, no.
no,
The one thing
none of the daring stuff.
no, no, and no. I'm a foodie. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a particular foodie. I can barely eat the spice. I'm like, is this spicy? Not too spicy, man. I'm like, I thought you
Yeah.
said this was not too spicy. I was like, oh my god.
Mm,
So, but it was a joy. It was
but
good, and I want to go back.
yeah. But I do think that it was we shared in this short amount of time, you shared a lot. I do think that it is very important to investigate the culture that you're visiting. Investigate the culture that you're going to promote, that you're going to promote to, which is, I wish we could have talked about that, how you promoted your business to different countries while you were there. But then you have to be culturally aware of all of them.
Yeah.
And, the fact that
Yeah.
you took it, yes, you have to be culturally aware of all of them and the norms and, you know, uh, you know, being open to saying, hey, I'm here. And if I did something wrong, let me know. I'm open to, to learn.
Yes.
Don't feel like I know what I'm doing. But yeah, that's this has been a joy.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad. And I hope that all of our listeners and or viewers, wherever you're engaging. I hope that this was helpful and gave you some insight. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Make sure you reach out to us. We are happy to answer any questions for you. Again, I am Coach Dawn, Dr. Dawn Reid, certified coach. And again, my wonderful co host, Coach Will. We are so excited
Hey,
back. And yeah, you guys take care and check out the next segment because we're going to continue the conversation around the ethical and culturally responsive aspects of coaching. All right, you guys, take care.